Hey everybody, this is Ibarionex from the Candid Frame. One of the things that I'm always in the pursuit of when I'm doing my street photography is trying to capture genuine human interaction. There are plenty of people out in the streets, and for the most part, they're just trying to get from point A to point B. But there are moments when people are interacting with each other. They're either family, they're friends, they're acquaintances, and they react to each other, or they're intimate in a particular way. And I think that some of the best street photography is images that capture that relationship between these two people. And one of the things that I'm always in the hunt for is genuine affection in a photograph. And today I wanted to focus on the embrace. There are a variety of different ways people embrace out in the street. And one of the things that can happen is that when you see it, you shoot it, but you're not paying attention to all the other things that are in the frame. We talk all the time in these videos about owning the frame, about being aware of more than just your subject. So I chose 3 images here that really aptly demonstrate why it's so important to do so. All right, here we have a shot by C.P. Plunkett. This was shot with what looks like a camera phone, so we don't have any XF data here. So here we have a wonderful gesture, a wonderful moment of intimacy. This couple, they're embracing each other, and she plants this lovely kiss on his cheek just as they're about to get ready to cross the street. Now, it's a wonderful moment. This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about, this intimacy that happens in public. But let's take a look at what else is happening in the shot that makes it a really good photograph. One is the quality of the light. We're dealing with late afternoon light here. And you can see the long shadows that are created here that help to sort of sandwich the couple in this wonderful shaft of light. The shadow here is obstructed by what I assume is a building here. So you can see this car that's moving here through the crosswalk and further down the street. And then we have the shadow here on the right-hand side. We have the shadow of the photographer here. On the right hand side, you can see his elbow here on this guy's right arm. So we have this wonderful contrast between light and shadow, in which they're basically sandwiched between these areas of shadow here, helping to bring our attention to the couple here. And we also have the shaft of light that hits the facade of the building here. We have this guy with the red shoes, and then we have a repetition of pattern. We have this repetition of pattern in the crosswalk. We have that pattern also mirrored here in the facade of the building. So we got line and shape as well as light and shadow that's happening here. And then we have this color, the color of their red hair, the red shoes, the red hand from the crosswalk sign. And all of these things sort of come into play here to create a really interesting shot. Now, when you see a moment like this, you only have seconds to react. So it can be difficult to take into consideration all the other things that are in the frame. Now, I love the crosswalk here. I love the lines because they help sort of guide our eye here. We get this great visual triangle that's as a result. The only thing I'm not a big fan of is, of course, the Citibank. Signage is something I'm always sort of trying to avoid in a frame. So for me, if I had been photographing the scene, I likely would have tilted the camera down a little bit in order to eliminate those from the frame. And it looks like you would have plenty of room here to sort of begin the frame here and get a little more of the couple here just below the elbow, and probably emphasize a little more of the shadow. But despite the fact that the signage is there, I still think it's a wonderful photograph. The red here may be a little issue because we've talked about how saturated colors can draw our attention here. So I'm not sure exactly whether that is enough of an issue for me to want to convert it over to black and white. I think this image, even with that repetition of red, works largely because they're redheads. They're both redheads. So even though this is much more saturated a red than they possess in their own hair, I think it kind of fits. I would probably desaturate some of this red a little bit, just so it isn't as much of a distraction as it is here. But I think that the moment, the gesture, the expression of love and affection that's exhibited by these two young people really overcome those small elements that are serving as a little bit of a distraction. This moment is so magical and so beautiful that you can have an imperfect image and still have it sing. And I think this one does that does that in spades. Okay, here we have a shot by Bowden. This was created with a Fuji X Pro 2, 1/750th of a second, f8, ISO 400. So here we have a different kind of embrace. We have this mother and this daughter moving through the street. We see their embrace captured in the foreground of the scene, but we see their faces in the reflection in the mirror that's laying here on the sidewalk. I love how this image is broken down into different planes. With the other shot, we were fully focused on the couple, and they were on a singular plane. But here, these two people are captured in two different planes, which I think is really sort of an interesting way of creating this composition. So I love the reflection of the glass and how the people are looking into the camera at that particular moment. I don't know whether this was a completely found shot or whether or not Sean here knew the people and they purposely moved through the frame. Doesn't really matter, because what I'm really paying attention to is, again, all the other elements in the frame, because this is a very graphic shot, largely because of the shapes and the lines that are created by the lines of the body. You know, you have this the L shaped of the arm here, basically the triangle created here, the triangle created here, the triangle created here. That's repeated throughout the frame, including this sort of a triangle that's created by the mirror in the background. Again, we have repeating shapes that pervade the shot here in the sidewalk itself, and then we have all those squares and rectangles that are throughout the frame. You have a nice quality of light that's happening here. You're getting this shadow here on the left-hand side, so the shadow is coming from the photographer's right and just over their shoulder, which is one of the reasons why you get that nice spot of light on the two people here within the frame. But again, the reason why this shot and the previous shot work so well is because it's more than just about the gesture. It's more than just about the affection. It's about the making of the entire frame. And when you're shooting out in the street and you see a moment like that, you have to take that beat. You have to take that pause in seeing to really analyze everything that's being presented to you in the frame. And then you have to sort of jockey for position to ensure that you're in the right position to not only capture the emotion, the affection, the gesture, but also to own the frame in a way that you can include everything that needs to be in the shot that serves the subject and exclude all the things that are potential distraction. Here, I don't see any elements here that I would consider a distraction at all. We do have some text here and some here, but it's so minimal that it really it's not problematic for me. It's not like that little splash of red that we had in the previous image. This is obviously a black and white image, so I don't know if the color itself posed an issue, and this is why Sean converted it into a black and white. But suffice it to say that the strength of the image lies in the things that I've just described, and that's the thing you really have to be on the hunt for and be very conscious of when you're making a frame, especially when moments are very fleeting. It can seem like it's impossible just because things are happening so fast. But if you get into the practice of evaluating a scene with each photograph that you make, whether it's happening within seconds or whether you have the leisure of several seconds or minutes to really think it through, it can make all the difference in the world. Okay, here we have a shot by Luca Rossi. We have no XF data here. So here we have another mother-daughter embrace. In this case, the child is completely exhausted. The head is hung over the shoulder of the mother. She's probably completely asleep and knocked out. Her mother is clutching her. You can see both of her hands clasped just below the girl's butt. We have this man who's leaning over, looking at what seems to be like a store or a vendor. It's hard to say exactly what it is. And we have the light that's hitting this balloon just above these two figures. Now here, a lot of the details in the background are completely obscured. So this is one of those times where you use light and shadow to great effect by using the shadow to obscure details that might otherwise be distracting. In the other two shots, light and shadow were still at play, but here it's even more an important role because details here that may have been secondary or even tertiary to the entire frame completely get eliminated because the exposure is biased for the highlight. And not only are they illuminated here, but we have this balloon from this, probably this comic figure or animation figure here that exists right above them. And suddenly this shot becomes more than just about, you know, the affection and the embrace, but it's also about color. We got those blues, we got those whites, we have those reds, we have those yellows, all that play off of each other in a very small area of the frame. That marked contrast between light and dark become all the more important here. We do lose detail here on the girl's face, and that's largely a result of the fact that the sun is coming from, looks like the left-hand side, and so all of this is sort of relegated to shadow. You might be able to pull this open just a little bit, just so we can get some details in the face, but that doesn't really sort of ruin the shot for me. But think about how all of these photographers, in one way or another, are considering the other elements in the frame other than the embrace. The embrace in each of these shots is a strong factor in the success of each of these images. They are the heart of each of those photographs. But how you experience them is markedly different as a result of the elements that they included or excluded from the frame. And that's the challenge for you as a street photographer, is pulling off an image where you not only capture a wonderful gesture or expression of emotion, but create a really interesting composition. Because if you don't do that, you'll capture a kiss, an embrace, a hug. But because there's so many distractions or bothersome elements in the background, the shot just falls apart. And that's why you have to practice this over and over again whenever you go out into the street, is consciously being aware of everything in your frame and absolutely owning it. All right, thanks for joining me again. And check out The Candid Frame. It's a podcast in which I interview photographers about their work and their career. I had a wonderful interview with Joanna Toro, who is a Colombian-based photographer who was a successful journalist back in her native Colombia, who came to the United States to expand on her career as a photojournalist, and within a year was out of money. And so she started working the streets of New York City in Times Square in the Hello Kitty costume, approaching tourists to take their pictures and soliciting tips from them. And it would be a dream breaker for a lot of people, but she turned it around by starting to photograph from inside of the costume. And then later, she started photographing the people who were also in costumes, soliciting tourists for tips in that area. And it changed her career as a result. So if you haven't listened to that episode, you most definitely should take a listen. It is really, really inspiring. And I also wrote a review of my favorite photographer, William Albert Allard's new book, Paris, the Eye of the Flaneur. I actually interviewed him for the show, and that's going to be released this weekend. So keep an eye out for that. And if you want to submit images to the Candid Frame Flickr Pool, all you have to do is to go to Flickr on the Candid Frame, ask to be added, and I'm more than glad to add you to the group of photographers whose work I pull from every week. Just make sure to do it on your computer and not your tablet or phone, because if you try to do it to your tablet or phone, you'll be notified that it's a private group and you can't access it. It's just because, well, whatever reason it is, you can't do it. So just go to the Candid Frame on Flickr on your computer, ask to be added, and I'll be more than glad to do so. So thanks for joining me again, and I'll see you next time.